There we go. Good? All right. So yeah, I started coming down with it Saturday night, and Sunday morning I'm like laying in bed going like, I think what I could do is I could have everybody show up. I just pop in, do the sermon, and then leave, But as it got going on, it was like, no, this is not going to work. And so I appreciate everybody that had to change things around, from the worship team to calling Jordan, and but I heard he did good. Yeah, I heard he did well. I heard he got done early, so I got to make up for it today and be a little later. But it's good to be here with you guys. So last week I wasn't here. The week previous to that, we had covered the beginning part, the introduction to the book of Hebrews. And remember I told you that it was written for believers, for people that already believe. They were maybe Hellenistic Jews. In other words, they were Jewish, but they weren't from Israel, and that type of thing. They may have come in from, they kind of think maybe Italy could be. But anyway, doesn't matter. The author, don't know. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. It does matter, because those people that he was speaking to are people just like you and me, because they were people that were falling away from the faith. They were either becoming complacent where they were, and they were okay with the way things were, but yet it just wasn't getting enough. So it was kind of like in, out, kind of there, kind of not. And then there were people there that really were contemplating on leaving the church because of persecution. So the persecution was heavy enough that they were thinking, okay, I'm going to go back to Judaism because I don't want to get picked on anymore. And then there were people there that were just contemplating, is this even worth following? What's the issue? I mean, not what's the issue, but why would I do this? I mean, it's hated. And you got to remember, at this point in time, the church was small. See, we don't have that perspective today because we see the church as being big, because it is big. But in those days, it was small. It was a fledgling group of people that were striving under the Holy Spirit to advance and go forward. And for the next 300 years, this is how this goes. But at this point in time, Christianity was seen as paganism, right? We kind of look at the other way around. I mean, they serve multi-gods and all that. We call them pagans. But in this point in time in history, Christians would have been called pagans because they were that small, and all the other religions dwarfed Christianity. So I don't know why I went in that road, but anyway, I did. So this is written to believers. More than likely, it was not a letter. You see, we look at the New Testament and we think a lot of like letters. We think of letters of Paul, right? Or the synoptic gospels. I mean, they're all like letters, but this probably was a sermon, more than likely. And it was written sometime around AD 62 to 70, and they know that because of different things in history, artifacts that they have found, like that was dated in AD 92 that they found in Italy that was referencing the book of Hebrews. So they can nail dates down pretty close. And so they know that the temple wasn't destroyed because it's referenced in Hebrew, the book of Hebrews, and on and on. The biggest thing that was going on at this time was the author of this was saying to the congregation, this is what we covered a few weeks ago, was saying to the congregation, God is still speaking. And he starts out in Hebrews 1, he starts, I think I got it up here, starts out with a long ago, and at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. And that, remember I said that that's almost like saying a long time ago is almost like capturing the beginning of a story. It's going to grab your attention. almost like saying once upon a time. You know, if I'm standing in a group and I get up and I say, once upon a time, everyone's going to be going like, oh, once upon a time what? You know, and so he says a long time ago, and everybody's going, yeah, a long time ago what? And so the God was still speaking to the people, and what he was saying to them was, God is still speaking today. Just because he spoke back then to the prophets doesn't mean that he's quiet now, and he still speaks now. And then the author goes on to talk about the supremacy of Jesus Christ and who he is and who we worship and who we follow. Be very careful of getting complacent. You following Jesus Christ, the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, he is royalty. And remember, I referenced like Tom Brady showing up here. You know, if Tom Brady showed up here, everybody would give him attention. Not everybody in this room would know who Tom Brady is as a football player, but they would know the name because he's synonymous. He's known around. But yet, you would give him respect just because of who he is. And sometimes, if you think about our lives, do we give Jesus respect for who he is? And this is what the beginning of Hebrews starts out with. I'm going to jump over angels, and here's why. I'm pretty sure that you didn't wake up this morning thinking about the supremacy of Jesus over angels, right? You probably didn't think that. In our culture, we would not think this, because we pretty much know that that's what it is. And there may be people out there painting with a wide brush. There may be people that don't understand it. But I'm pretty sure in this room, if I quizzed you guys, you would all say that Jesus was superior to angels. But in this audience, this would have been an issue. This would have been something very important because the Jewish people held angels in high regard, right? They were there. They associate the law and Moses with angels, right? And so that's another whole subject, another whole thing, the road to go down. But yet, in this culture, he had to separate who Jesus was compared to the angels because it was hard for them to understand that somebody other than God was higher than the angel. And so it was a hard thing for them to get over. You and I, not so much. But so today, open up your Bibles, devices, whatever you got, and I encourage you to bring something to look at because I'm going to be nice to you and put stuff up on the screen, but I might not be nice to you and not put anything up on the screen and force you to look. But listen, this is a very important sermon, and it deals with the humanity. It deals with who we are as human beings and who Jesus Christ is. And so pay very close attention to the sermon. For me, it was really heavy, right? And I hope I don't get too heavy with you guys. But it was heavy, but yet very, very good. Good knowledge to know, good knowledge to understand. So Hebrews chapter 2, 6 through 8. It has been testified somewhere, what is man that you are mindful of him, or the Son of Man that you care for him? You made him for a little while lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and honor, putting everything in subject under his feet. Now, in putting everything in subject to him, he left nothing outside of his control. I'm going to stop right there. All right, I'm going to quiz you. Are you listening? You just heard that somewhere. Where did you hear it? Just heard it. What is man? What is man that you are mindful of him? We just heard it. Jordan just said it. You guys aren't listening. What is man that you are mindful of him? So this guy, the author of Hebrews, is going to constantly go back to the Old Testament. And this is why they think that probably this guy was a priest or he had something to do with the temple, because he very much was steeped in the Old Testament. And so he's going to keep going back to the Old Testament, and I love that idea because I love going back to the Old Testament. I would camp out in the Old Testament for a long time, but you guys would get bored. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. So, yes, he goes back to Psalm 8. And I love that opening. You like that opening? I get a kick out of it because it sounds something like me. And he says in that very opening up there, he said, it has been testified somewhere. Like saying, like, I heard this somewhere. Where did I hear it? Kind of like I just said to you guys. Like, where did we just hear this? And so he's like you and I, where it's like, well, I heard it somewhere that this was said, and he spouts off, but he doesn't go verbatim, word for word of Psalms 8, does he? He kind of like pulls it, different pieces out of it, but he pretty much in whole keeps it together. It's great if you can, but if you're witnessing to somebody and God puts some scripture in your mind, don't hesitate to say it because you don't know where that actually came from in the Bible. But understand that if God plants that in your head, please say it because it's important. Something is going on there that you should pay attention to, and this guy does this. The title of this sermon is called The Two Hymns in Humanity. All right, so the two hymns in humanity. What is man that you are mindful of him, or the Son of Man that you care for him? You made him a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and honor, putting everything subject under his feet. What is happening here in in Hebrews chapter 2? Who is this talking about? Jesus? Jesus is always a safe answer in church and Sunday school, and usually anytime you're around Christians, it's like, is the sun going to come up tomorrow? Jesus. No, it doesn't always work, but good majority of the time it will. Yes, kind of. Yeah. Go back to Psalm 8:4, if you would. And that actually be up on the screen, I think. Now listen to this. Verse 4. What is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you care for him? You have made him a little lower than the heavenly beings, and you have crowned him with glory and honor. Listen. You gave him dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, and the birds of heaven, and the fish of the sea, and whatever passes along the paths of the sea. Who is he talking about? Us. Yeah, oh, very good. Let's go. Let's go, you guys. I'm going to take you on a trip around the Bible. Go with me to Genesis, chapter 1, 26 through 28. Very good. Very good. This is going to make this sermon so much easier. All right, verse 26. And then God said, I love this. And then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and all of the animals, and all of that. Verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of heaven, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. There's a couple of words I want you to listen to here. Dominion and rule. Some of your Bibles may have a different translation when it comes to that word, dominion. It might say subdue, or subject, or subjection. But what do all of those words mean? Dominion, subject, subjection. What do all those words mean? It's one word that we think of. We can. Rule. Rule, have dominion. God said, rule over my creation. Right? What does that look like? What does that look like for us to rule? What does that look like? I mean, put that thought in your mind. You don't have to answer it, but just put that thought in your mind and then ask the question of you, how do we rule? What does it look like for us to rule? Now, I don't know about you, but if I think about me ruling, I have trouble with the coffee maker. I mean, sometimes I'll come out in the morning and there's no coffee in there. I programmed it. There's nothing in there, and it's like, look at it and open it up. It's like, whatever. And it's like, maybe I didn't set the timer, or probably I didn't put any coffee grounds in it. That was the latest one. But at any rate, I mean, how do we rule? I mean, what does it even look like? I mean, how do we dominate? I mean, how does this come about? I mean, I want to prove a point to you how we dominate and how we rule. In the last 3 years or so, what was the most popular movie that came out? Now, you guys in worship team know what it is because you already heard it. What do you think it might be? Action movie. Avengers. Avengers was listen, it was huge. It depicts the best of the best going against the worst, and they totally destroy them. Destruction. And they win and they dominate over the people that are trying to dominate over us, whether it's an alien or whatever. And listen, the Avengers averaged $720 million. That's what it brought in. Endgame brought in $892 million. Black Panther, $715. Marvel, Dark Knight, Batman, $697 million. 007, Mission Impossible. They all have the same theme. They all have the same genre. Good over evil, and evil is utterly destruction and killed. That gives us a snapshot of how we rule. Now, hear me out. This is how we rule. And this, you may be saying, well, Pastor, that's kind of heavy. We're not like that. We don't do that. Well, I challenge you on that one. Because if somebody crosses you, how do you react? You mess up my sandbox, I'm going to mess yours up. You cross me and mine, I'll make you wish you never crossed us. That's the attitude. I'm painting with a wide brush. I'm not saying that all of you guys do that. But if you look at history and how history has gone, this is exactly how we rule. History has shown us that we are terrible at ruling. And working in a machine shop one time, a good friend of mine, we were talking back and forth. We were talking about aliens. And my friend looked at me and he said, you know what? If there is life on another planet, they better hope that they're smarter than us. Because if they're not, we will rule them and we will dominate them. And he's exactly right. There's this guy, Nietzsche. I'm not sure if I say his name right. I'm not a Nietzsche person, but he was in the 19th century. He was a philosopher. Got a nice mustache. Look at that thing. Woo! And this guy was an atheist. And he believed at some point humanity would move to the point that they realized that Christianity was just foolish and that we needed to look within us in order to be able to grow as humanity. So we stopped killing each other and all these things. And so Nietzsche in writing, and the only reason why I'm quoting Nietzsche, and this is not me, the only reason why I'm quoting him is because I found it in the research, and it makes total sense. Nietzsche in The Will to Power says, humans possess the fundamental drive to assert their power and exert control over their surroundings. And we will. Look at a playground, watch your kids. It's just in us. We want to dominate. We want to control. And he's exactly right, and the Bible shows us that he's exactly right. And if we go to the fall of man, Satan uses this idea to dupe Eve. God's holding back on you. Something God has that he's not giving you because he knows if he gives it to you, you'll be like him. Right? And Eve follows that path, and we see the fall of man. Previous to this, we just read about it, that we were put in charge over the garden, put in charge over his creation and all of this stuff. And then Genesis 3 happens and the fall of man happens. And how do we rule? Well, just go a little bit further ahead and somebody dies. Cain kills Abel. Abel messed up Cain's sandbox. Not going to happen again. Don't cross me. I'll make you wish you never met me. That's how we rule. And you look at creation, or you look at the world, and you can see it is happening today. The domination, the Russia and the Ukraine or wherever. I mean, you go right into our own politics in our country. It's a domination. It's we need to get control over the other ones because they don't know what they're doing, or the other way around. You know, it's this vicious circle that goes on and on through humanity, and we have messed up big time. And we keep messing up, and we keep messing up, and we keep messing up. And we will mess up. We need an avenger. We need a hero. I said this was a story of the two he's or the two hymns in humanity, the uppercase and the lowercase, and we're the lowercase, and Jesus is the uppercase, and enter Jesus. Now here's where things get very, very important. I laid the foundation for you guys, but hear me out. This is so important for your own thought process, is how salvation and how this is all working for us. In Hebrews chapter 2, what is man that you are mindful of him, capital H, or the Son of Man that you care for him, capital H. You made him, Jesus, a little lower than the angels. For a little while, you made him a little lower than the angels. You crowned him with glory and honor, putting everything subject under his feet. That's talking about Jesus and us. Now, I'll break that down for you. Go down to 8, last part of 8. You put everything subject to him, and nothing is out of his control. Verse 9, but we see him who for a little while was made lower than the angels, namely Jesus, and crowned him glory and honor because of his suffering of death, so that by the grace of God, I'm getting raspy, by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone. Now that's important. Jesus became human. And there's a reason why he did. And there's a fundamental, profound reason why he did. Verse 14, since therefore the children share in flesh and blood, hear this. He himself likewise partook of the same things, flesh and blood, that through death he might destroy the one who has the power